Good morning, everyone. I will call Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order today for Tuesday, September 8th. I just want to mention that we will have a public hearing on the establishment of a subordinate service district at 9:30 this morning. So I have a timer set off and at 9:29, and we will go right into that at that time. I would like to start the meeting off with a statement about meetings that we will hold as commissioners during the COVID-19 pandemic by Zoom this morning. And the following statements are to be made at any meeting according to the statutes. Number one, it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and a related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 12. Number two, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear and possibly see each other and attend to the discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. Number three, we've also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the Cook County website. Number four, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Auditor Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator Rena Rogers, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. Number five, all votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. Would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will go to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none or hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Commissioner Mills. I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, Commissioner Mills, do we have support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Dukirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Mills.
Aye.
Commissioner Storley.
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim's aye. Passes. We'll go to the public comment period. Has our Administrator Rogers received any notifications or any emails in regards to public comment, or is there anyone in the audience?
I have not received any letters and there is no one in the audience today.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to the consent agenda items. Is there any of those through A through D that Commissioner would like to pull? Seeing none or hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve them as a whole.
This is Commissioner Mills. I move to approve the consent agenda. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Roll call vote. Commissioner Storley?
Aye.
Commissioner Mills? Commissioner Mills?
Aye.
Commissioner Dukirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim's aye. Very good. We'll go to Emergency Operations Command update, and we will start with Mike Keyport today. Thanks for joining us, Mike, and all you do. And you can go ahead with your update at this time, then we'll go to Grace after that.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, community members. Emergency management wise, our EOC remains open, mostly virtually, of course. I continue to meet with the state twice a month now. At last Thursday's meeting, it was decided that meeting may either go away completely or maybe down to one time a month, means how there's not a lot to report anymore. The state did say on Thursday, excuse me, that their message early on was, if you need any help, call us. And now their message is, if you need anything, you have CARES money, so take care of yourself. I continue to meet with the 11 county, 5 tribe in the city of Duluth region. We did decide last Thursday also to move that meeting to just twice a month, as many of the counties are in a good place and haven't had a lot of things change. As you may recall, I helped Graham Portage walk through an emergency declaration last October 12th. They had damage to a roadway and a shoreline due to the COVID. They couldn't begin the work to fix that problem. Any state emergency declaration, you typically have a year to complete the work. It was declared by the governor on January 12th, I believe. So they have until January 12th to complete that work. I met with the tribal chair last Friday, and we determined that they're going to bring a crew back and get that work accomplished here yet this fall, probably about a 6-week or so project. So I'll be spending a little time up there to walk them through the reporting process as we get that project completed. I always mention since this pandemic began here in Cook County that it's a very scalable situation where we ramped up early on. We opened the EOC, we did everything right. I think we're continuing to do everything right. We started our hub site, we started our hotline number. I did speak with Jeffrey Morick this morning. We discussed at our briefing last Thursday that maybe it's time for the hotline to be dialed back. He reported to me that the hotline is getting maybe one call a week. There was a few more last week, but it was mostly questions regarding the upcoming holiday. So we'll be discussing that at our briefing this week to likely do away with that call line. And I thank Jeff for helping us with that. The EOC, we did discuss that at our briefing too, and I think we're at a good point here that we can dial that back. I'm presently looking at around November 1-ish to possibly relieve Jim Weenanen of his duties and dial the EOC back, if not close it and just meet with the major players. At our regional meeting last week, we had many discussions about what folks are doing in their courthouses and the Board of Commissioners. And you know, as we went around the room, I learned that most all Board of Commissioners are meeting in person with safety measures and physical distancing in place. They are allowing public to come into their commissioner rooms, however, with the only so many in the room at a time. all but I think 2 of the 11 counties in our region, the courthouses are open with safety precautions in place. And I think here in Cook County, we've done a great job of putting things together here in our courthouse and our county buildings as to safety measures and protocols. But you know, in the scalable, again, it might be something for you folks to consider to bringing yourselves back into the courthouse here, and with all our safety measures in place, I think it would be a good call. I thought I had one more thing for you here, but I'm not seeing it. So that's what I have for you this morning. Thank you.
Okay. Mike, I know you have to run off to another meeting. Do you have enough time for us to ask any questions from the
Yes.
commissioners?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So any comments or questions from Commissioner Dukirk?
Yeah, Mike, how are other counties doing the socially distancing with having the commissioners back in the room? Our desks are really close to each other and we only have one camera.
Right. They worked that out with their IT department so they could just spread the commissioners out. And then, as I said, the public, a few of the counties actually allow their department heads first into the room. And then if there's any space left, then the public. And most all of them do YouTube, as we do also.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Storley? Questions, comments?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chairman Bersheim. So Mike, with all the dialing back and the closings, I did read an article that FEMA was going to be dialing back on some of the supplies and things that they normally would do by September 15th. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard that date specifically, but I have heard that FEMA is dialing back on PPE, and because of supply chains have picked up, and we can, and of course they're using the CARES Act money as their defense, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Commissioner Mills, questions or comments for Mike?
I don't think I have any questions right now. Thank you, Mike, very much, especially for the perspective on what other counties and boards are doing. I think it's worth looking at a little bit, and no rush to change things right now for us. I'd like to err on the side of caution, but you know, I want to keep moving forward too. So, but that's all for now.
Okay, I guess, Mike, I don't have any questions or comments, but again, thank you for all you do, and we've done very well. Thanks to everyone. I mean, getting ahead of the curve, so to speak, was sort of the language of the day several months ago, and I think we did extremely well. And sometimes you take advantage of your, you know, advantages, and our advantage was smaller, moving fast, but it really put a lot of pressure on people like Mike and Grace and others because of our department size, to really move. And thank you so much. It's showing in the numbers, I think, to a great extent, as far as probability. Okay, thanks again, Mike, for your report and your work. We'll move on to Grace Chronometer for your update. Grace, go ahead.
Good morning, commissioners. So since I last gave an update on August 28th, 2 weeks ago, the number of COVID-19 cases in Minnesota rose by 10,932 from 70,293 to 81,225. In Cook County, the case count has remained steady at 6, which puts us as currently the county with the lowest case count in the state. We know that could change, but I think it is something to be proud of, and to stay vigilant and keep up the public health practices that have kept us at that low number. So updates on our response from these past 2 weeks. We're continuing to focus on supporting the schools, holding weekly briefings on Thursday afternoon with Grand Portage Health Services, myself and Jody Turbo Roberts, our school liaison within Public Health and Human Services, and leadership from all 4 schools in the community. Last week, the Minnesota Department of Health updated its guidance for school, childcare, and other youth programs regarding what to do when someone feels ill. They call it the exclusion guidance. So it talks about when to stay home and when to come back to school. And it involves also testing and isolation quarantine. There was training on this guidance last week, which both Jody and myself attended, and we were able to pass on to our school partners. Jody also, in her role as school liaison, created a frequently asked questions document related to schools based on the questions we've been getting from community members and also from partners within the schools themselves. The document will be updated weekly and is now posted to the county's hub website. I will also link to it in my notes. Minnesota Department of Health is increasing compliance checks to licensed food, pool, and lodging facilities within Cook County and as well as the region at large to ensure compliance with COVID-19 precautions. And this is because statewide, there's been an increase in complaints coming through the licensing branch of the Minnesota Department of Health. So within Public Health and Human Services, we've worked with Visit Cook County and the Chamber of Commerce to re-extend our offer to provide technical assistance to local businesses, given this increase in compliance checks that we expect in the coming weeks. Our new case investigation contact tracing staff, Maggie Farshman and Andrea Tofty, are trained in and working with Kristen. We have that scheduled out in collaboration with colleagues in Lake County to back one another up. And right now we're still providing opportunities for our newer staff to shadow others in the region, but they are taking call shifts. And once we do see cases, Kristen or our partners in Lake County will be able to shadow our new staff. MDH is also now, just as we've got everything set up, they're changing the statewide model for case investigation and contact tracing. So this week, we're going to learn more about how that will look and how our current system here in Cook County can best adapt to interface with the updates that the state has planned. We're also working with Sawtooth Mountain Clinic to promote their drive-through flu shot clinics coming up this month. Flu shots are something that we promote every year, but they're especially important during the pandemic because part of our public health strategy is to help make sure that our healthcare systems aren't overwhelmed. So the more people get flu shots, the less the burden of seasonal influenza will be on our healthcare system as the COVID pandemic continues on. Sadie Sigford, in her role as the perinatal COVID-19 health educator, met with maternal child health nursing staff at Sawtooth Mountain Clinic and Grand Portage Health Services to talk about how to best collaborate on the virtual peer support groups for childbearing families, which she will begin to offer via Zoom in late September. AEOA is working in collaboration with Andrea Orest as the SHIP coordinator for Cook County, as well as Grand Portage Community Center and the Cook County Food Shelf to offer another free food distribution event on September 16th. These are distribution events that are designed using CARES Act funding as well to make sure that people have food security during the pandemic, given reduced hours at work and other struggles with finances during the pandemic. Andrea, also in her role as the volunteer manager for the EOC, is coordinating printing and distributing Minnesota Responds shirts for our volunteers so that they can use them in their volunteer shifts. And finally, both the EOC and PHHS publicized a COVID-19 housing assistance program that is available statewide including to local community members who are struggling to pay rent, mortgage, and utility costs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I've linked to some of those resources in my notes, but even as our EOC kind of response winds down a little bit, it still continues on, and in public health, we do still continue to be very busy. I think with the increased temporary staffing, it's helped to spread the workload out, but I think we've kind of got our feet under ourselves, but from within public health, the pandemic is still requiring quite a bit of time and attention to respond. So I'm very grateful for the support in being able to bring on these additional support staff, as well as for the continued support of the EOC, even as we think about scaling back. I think the kind of key players within that structure will continue to provide support to our efforts, and that is very helpful. And that's all I have for updates this week.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Let's go to questions or comments. We'll start with Commissioner Mills.
No questions. Only comment is to thank you for the update and continued work, and especially thankful for the staff reaching out in the community and supporting as best we can.
Commissioner Dukirk?
No questions. Thank you for the update.
Commissioner Starley?
No questions, just another thank you for you and your staff, and appreciate all that you're doing.
Yes, I would like to reiterate too, the thanks to the staff, and I think you've really used the CARES funding, and I want to commend Rena Rogers for this too, on how we could staff our service level here with some of these additional part-time funding and so forth, because I think that's part of the issue that we're having right now with our success, the contact tracing, working with the school. Very formative and highly preventative measures have been taken. And so thank you for your leadership with that, Grace. Okay, we'll go to item number 5, 6th District of Minnesota Judicial Court. We have with us Sarah Curtis this morning. Welcome, Sarah. And you're here to request an approval to proceed with a plan in developing a regional site for the grand juries during the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. The 6th District is having a conversation with all of the various counties about a safe way to conduct grand juries. Just for a little bit of background information for all of you, grand juries are very uncommon in the 6th. In the last year, we have only convened one, and that happened to be in Hibbing. That being said, they're different than our traditional felony jury trials in the fact that it is a function and is really managed by the county attorney's office. And the big piece of this in terms of the pandemic is that we have to have a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 23 jurors to be able to be successful with a grand jury. Clearly in Cook County, that poses some problems, as well as in many other counties in our district, because the courtrooms that we have simply can't facilitate that many folks. And really, we can't have a grand jury with only 16. So we need to have somewhere less than 23, but something more than 16 to ensure that in case anyone got sick, there would be, the grand jury could continue. So what we have thought about doing is creating a regional grand jury location, because Carleton County has a courtroom that is large enough that can safely do this and do it in a traditional sense. We can get approximately 22 jurors into the gallery of that courtroom with appropriate social distancing. The purpose of this conversation today is to simply to see if Cook County would support this proposal. The next step after that is that we would need to really communicate with the county attorney's office. And this plan would only proceed as long as the Cook County attorney was comfortable with it proceeding that way. The goal would be to use members from the Cook County community as jurors, use resources from Cook County just as we would if the grand jury were to conduct there. We would simply just be using Carlton as a location. I have had a chance to speak to the other counties. Carlton County, I went to their board and discussed this plan with them. They support this and are willing to allow all of the counties to use their site if that's the plan that we move forward with. Lake County, I had an initial conversation with their board and they are going to be voting on this proposal today. And as an update, St. Louis County, I did speak with their county administrator as well as the county attorney there. I think St. Louis County, because of the fact that they may be able to do this in a courtroom in the Duluth courthouse, that they are going to try to look to see if that can be done first before they would approve this plan. So I'm not sure the route that St. Louis County will take at this point. You know, they think that maybe they might be able to do this in a kind of non-traditional sense by moving some folks around in the courtroom like they normally wouldn't be. But that conversation is still ongoing with the St. Louis County Attorney's Office. So this particular plan is simply only in response to the pandemic. And so if we move forward with this plan, once the pandemic is over, we would go back to our normal scenario where grand juries would be held directly in the Cook County Courthouse.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Just go around for any questions or comments, and then hopefully we can move on this. It looks like it's sort of up to us, and it sounds like a good way to proceed, and maybe the only way to proceed for us. So Commissioner Mills, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sarah, for the presentation and ask. I mean, odds are we're not going to need a grand jury during the pandemic, but say that if we did, how would transportation and or lodging work? And you know, seems like a significant hurdle for jurors. Just going to our courthouse can be a significant hurdle for jurors. So can you walk us through a little bit of that in the plan?
Sure, and we're digging into this right now just to ensure that we're not violating any policies. At the end of the day, my understanding is that when a juror reports from their home to, for instance, the Cook County Courthouse, the courts are responsible to pay the transportation costs such as mileage. So my understanding would be is that cost would be associated to the courts. Because Cook County is so far away from Carlton, it's, in my opinion, unreasonable to ask a juror to drive for grand jury every day. We would have to take a look and work with the county attorney's office in Cook County to determine, one, if that expense would fall on the courts, which if it does, I am glad to absorb that because of the unique situation that we are in. I would just need to make sure that we weren't violating any of our policies, but we are looking into that now.
Good question. Commissioner Dukirk?
Well, having a family member that recently went through a prosecution process, and the only thing that they asked for was that everything be conducted here. That was their only request of being a survivor. And that wasn't granted, and that was really incredibly difficult for the family. To expect a juror to be away from the community for a week at a time because it's difficult to travel every day, that's also a huge burden, especially during COVID when families are already struggling, when the schools are doing different ways of conducting business and you're already stressing the family by having them not be able to go to work or conduct business as they usually do. And so I understand due process. I understand obviously with my family that you want closure to whatever's going on, and you want, I mean, if I was being accused of a crime and it had to go to a trial, I wouldn't want to wait for a pandemic to be over to have a safe trial. But this just impacts way too many people to expect people to go to Carleton County. I can't support it, and I see both sides of it, but you know, the biggest factor to me is I know firsthand the impact of not having your family close to you when you have to go through something so difficult. And I can't do it for the accused and for the ones that are participating. It's too much of an ask. Sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Taylor, for giving us the details on this. And I would presume that you have discussed this with Molly, our attorney.
I have not yet. The details of the plan would be our second step, is to work with the county attorneys in the various counties that will participate.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Dukirk. It's a long ways to go for people up here. I could see perhaps maybe going to Duluth, because a lot of people go down there to shop and so forth. But during this really hard time of trying to stay at home as much as we can, going to Carleton, I think even if your mileage is paid, if you get caught up in a long jury, you know, it could be days or weeks. So if this doesn't fly for us to do that, what would be our alternative?
So I have two things. First of all, just so that to speak to both of your comments. One, this regional plan is not for a felony jury trial. This regional plan is for a grand jury. And the grand jury really, in essence, and I think that Ms. Hicken can speak more to this to clarify, is really the county attorney's opportunity to present evidence to be able to charge a potential defendant with a serious crime. So the victims that are associated with the case, or potential criminal defendant, are not involved in this process. This is the county attorney getting in front of a group of the public to make a determination of whether or not the evidence that they have meets enough probable cause to charge them with a certain offense in the state of Minnesota. These proceedings are held in secrecy. They are not open to the public, and so victims and family members cannot participate. In terms of what the other options are for Cook County, I'm not sure. If this is not the plan that we proceed forward with, the courts will undoubtedly work very hard with the county attorney's office to find a different solution. That being said, what that will mean for Cook County very likely is that we go off-site anyway. And that could mean that maybe Cook County has got a facility that's not being used, for instance, that in the event, right, that we get one, we could take that over. It would require some things such as, renting tech equipment to be able to support the recording processes and the evidence presenting that the county attorney needs to get this done. But there is an option to keep it in the community as long as we can find a space that is conducive to being able to do this based on the size.
So finding a space other than what our courtroom already facilitates meetings? You mean offsite, out of the courthouse?
Yeah, out of the courthouse. I don't know of a place inside the Cook County Courthouse where we could facilitate putting 16 to 23 people together. Plus the county attorney's office, plus the staff that they would need. That's the issue, is that the courtroom inside of Cook County is it's too small to facilitate folks.
Okay. Well, right now it seems like there's a few loose ends that need to be put together, and I kind of agree with St. Louis County. Let's kind of wait and see when we get all the ends put together. Molly's opinion and the idea that the grand jury is different than smaller, kind of getting people together because of smaller offenses, you're saying. Grand jury is bigger than that.
Yeah, a grand jury is literally those crimes that could result in a defendant being placed into incarceration for life.
Okay. Thank you.
They're very rare.
Okay.
I got one question, and then I'm going to defer to our attorney. Molly Hicken, but what is the probability that we would have a grand jury process initiated in Cook County? I'm into statistics, but anyone want to take a stab on that? Has it ever happened before in Cook County? It did maybe once. I'm not sure. Okay, go ahead, Attorney Hicken.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wouldn't dare to guess what the probability would be or the likelihood that this would happen during the pandemic. It's one circumstance that could lead to a grand jury requirement for charging. So this is something very rare. The last time that it occurred was in 2012 in Cook County, and I'm not aware of the time before that it would have occurred. There are a few different circumstances that could lead to the requirement for a grand jury, and one of them is a lifetime imprisonment offense. Oh, I'm remembering another occurrence. So in 13 years, we've had two. That's 13 years is how long I've been with the county. And they were both because the suspect involved was a member of law enforcement or the county attorney's office. So that is a rare occurrence here. And even if there were one upcoming, because these are secret proceedings, I couldn't reveal that. And so the requirement for space is greater for a grand jury than it is for a felony trial. We've figured out how to hold a felony trial in Cook County Courthouse with all the social distancing involved. I think, I'm not sure whether this would work with Ms. Taylor's process or the court administration's process, but if you wish to defer for my opinion, you could do that. You could table this. My primary concerns are the ones that we've already talked about today, which is the expense to either Cook County government or the out-of-pocket expense and inconvenience for the potential jurors. Since I haven't held a grand jury myself, I'm not sure if the voir dire process is similar, but I would assume the voir dire or jury selection process is similar, so that there would be an even larger group of potential jurors that we bring in, sometimes 2 or 3 times the size of the eventual jury that will be called. And so that voir dire process would have to also occur in Carlton. And so we're talking about a few dozen Cook County residents being pulled away from their daily lives to go 2 hours and 23 minutes drive down to Carlton. I'm also wondering if I could ask Sarah whether we could kind of table this and hear more about what St. Louis County Courthouse's plan would be for a grand jury. It sounds like they're trying to find space within their courthouse, because that would be slightly less inconvenient for Cook County residents. Would they be open to having us use their space instead of the Carlton County Courthouse space? I also think the question about whether there would be another place in Cook County where we could remotely hold these proceedings is a good question. Bear in mind that that does not come without expense either. It may be an expense that the county is requested to pay or share in. And perhaps the county board is willing to absorb that expense. That expense would come in kind of the moving the infrastructure of the court recording equipment, making sure that court personnel have computers and the networking that are required to use their systems. It's something that we have explored only very shallowly in relation to the jury trials, because we did after court administration and the sheriff's office and other personnel were able to walk around the courthouse, we discovered that we could do a jury trial or a felony jury trial here. Misdemeanor, the reason why we keep talking about felony jury trials is because that's a 12-person jury, 12 or 13 with an alternative juror. Misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor jury trials are held with a 6-person jury or 7 with an alternate. But I'm happy to, so those are my general concerns and questions and some options I see the county board taking up. But it does sound like the process that has been proposed here is that your consideration of this is only preliminary, and then the county attorney gets to have a say also. So I don't know if you would call that, is it kind of like a veto? Is this, would the county attorney be able, if our office wasn't comfortable with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, at the end of the day, the grand juries really are a function of the county attorney's office. The courts play a very secondary role. And so the goal here is that the courts are just, the courts have a requirement to Judicial Council to report some sort of a plan for grand juries, right? And that due date was September 1, and they've extended that because of how difficult it is to coordinate when you have these space issues. This plan to me would be our fail safe, right? We know we can do these in Carleton. We know we can do them safely in Carleton. That being said, if one pops up in Cook County, you know, and there's another alternative that Cook County is more comfortable with, that's fine. There might be an offsite location that the county is comfortable renting. There might be an AV company that you would all feel comfortable contracting with to get those services to that particular space. It just depends. The courts have become very good at handling cases remotely. And so we would not move our equipment from the courthouse to a secondary location. And the reason being is because it would cost so much money for us to do that because of the vendor that we work with and the sensitive nature of the equipment. We can, however, remotely record those proceedings as if we were inside the courthouse. So it's really about technology that the county attorney's office would need to be able to present the evidence in an effective way. So those are options, you know, and like I said, we're just trying to have some initial conversations with all of the counties. I'm not sure what space is available at the time. But the details of how this is going to operate itself really is going to have to be developed and determined, I think, by the county attorney's office. You have to have your own level of comfort with doing this. And so I am open to any suggestions, and I am open to working with each of the county attorney's offices to figure these details out. But I do need to report to Judicial Council on our efforts and likely soon. You know, our thought process behind creating a regional space in Carleton is that this is an absolute fail safe, that we know that we can do this and we can do this safely in the event one comes up unexpectedly while we're trying to figure this out.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Hicken and Sarah. I think the only other space I've been aware of with some meetings that I've been involved with is the community center. We go into that large portion where the rink is, but coming up, that I'm sure that curling is going to start again. So I don't know of any other option, but we had some safe meetings there with the Historical Society, but I can't think of anything else unless you just shut down the school or the gym or something. I don't know. So moving forward, Sarah, would it be I guess a logical way to proceed that if you could inquire more about the St. Louis County situation and somehow get back to Attorney Hicken or to us on that as an option, or we can just go ahead and leave this up to our county attorney to weigh in on it as the next step. So I guess I would like to throw that out to the board and to Attorney Hicken, to Sarah, how we can move this forward. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Taylor, for all the clarifications and getting this conversation going. And I think the Carleton County option is less than ideal. We're in a less than ideal situation. But it sounds like it could work, but details need to be worked out as far as cost and transportation and that sort of thing. But I would, much like Commissioner Dukirk and Commissioner Storley have mentioned, I would like to look a lot more towards a more local option and try to work that out. So I'd be very comfortable having the Carleton County as a stopgap, but with the intention of us getting something more local in place. Does that sound reasonable, or do we have to just 2 feet in one option or the other?
No, I think that is, from the court's perspective, that's fine. I mean, as long as we've got this safety net, you know, and one comes up, and we do have the option to go to Carleton if we can't figure that out locally, I think that's ideal. But like I said, I'm happy to work with the county attorney's office to try to figure out a different location.
Commissioner Dukirk?
I know that you've probably thought about this, but the ACA is huge and has lots of recording devices. Just a thought. But I'm more comfortable, as Commissioner Mills said, but I mean, even going to Duluth, I hate to tell you, Sarah, but this is a really small town. And if one person leaves the town for a super secret meeting, everybody will know.
Good point. Okay, any other comments? Commissioner Storley, I guess you haven't commented.
No, I would support that Molly work with Ms. Taylor and come up with some plan that would be agreeable. I think Carleton is a bit away, and maybe they could work out something, if this would happen during our pandemic, to be a little closer.
Okay, just to move this forward or not, would anyone want to entertain a motion in regards to the Carleton's fail-safe option? Commissioner Mills?
Mr. Chair, is a motion necessary at this point to kind of work out these details and develop something first, or do we need to actually adopt something now?
Okay, I'm going to address that question to Sarah. Do you need, for your purposes, a fail-safe last resort thing, or can we just delay this and contingent upon other, solutions?
How often does the board meet in Cook County?
Twice a month, typically.
Twice a month. I think at this point, what we can do is that we can table this discussion until I can have a more detailed conversation.
Okay.
Ms. Hicken.
Very good. So we'll go forward with a table on this. Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah, for all you do and for joining us today. And we had some good discussion on this, considering all the aspects and what's best for our constituents as well as the system. Okay. We'll move on to let's see, we don't have the public hearing, so I guess we'll try to do one more, unless you would like to take now it's 12 minutes for a break. Let's go into human resources, and Pam Dixon, are you with us, or someone else, in regards to approved resignation of Lisa Kerr?
I am here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead and see if we can wrap this up in about 7 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Good morning, commissioners, colleagues, and community members. I'm here to bring forward the resignation submitted on August 28th by Lisa Kerr. I will read a portion of her letter. Dear County Commissioners, HR Director Dixon, and County Assessor Thompson, it is with a heavy heart that I am announcing my resignation in the position of Land Commissioner / Assessor Technical Clerk. I am resigning due to the fact that the restructuring of the assessor's office as approved through administration will eliminate my current position as of August 31st, 2020. Please consider this my 2-week notice, with my last day being Friday, September 1st. She goes on to say that she will finish projects and that she has enjoyed much of her time working with wonderful people here at the county.
Okay. Is there any question or comments from anyone on this, or are we ready for a motion? Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept with regret Lisa Kerr's resignation.
This is Commissioner Mills. I move to accept with regret.
Okay, do we have support?
Starley support. And I have appreciated the work that she did with Parks and Trails, and wish her well as she moves forward.
Okay, thank you. We'll go do a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukirk,
Aye, and just clarifying, it's September 11th and not September 1st.
Excuse me, I apologize for that. You're correct.
okay, thank you for the correction. Commissioner Starley,
Aye.
Mr. Bersheim, aye. Approves. Going to the Highway Department, I assume this is going to take a little time. Correct? Robbie, you.
Depends how fast you would like to say yes. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
Up
can
to
we
you.
do this in 7-8 minutes?
Sure, we can. I can go quick.
Okay, very good.
So the little background just on this project, it's the Poplar River Bridge, the end of County Road 36 in Lutzen there. It connects the Superior Hiking Trail. Technically it's closed right now, but you know, if anybody has been out there, you can see that it's not the case. The bridge itself hasn't been inspected, I think, since like 2009. And so what this proposal is for LHB to go out there, perform a field inspection, and provide us with a report as far as what the condition of the bridge is, and then eventually recommendations either on replacement or repair. The cost in their proposal has been provided to us. If you haven't looked at it, it's right around, or I guess for those that haven't looked at it, it's right around $30,000. This is something that would come right out of our consulting services budget. And so while it wasn't officially in our budget, it's something that we do have the funds for. I guess I'll turn it around if anybody has any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments, Commissioner Dukirk?
I have none.
Commissioner Mills?
No, I guess I'm just not sure where this falls in our priorities, but if we have a unsafe bridge, I think or potentially unsafe bridge, we certainly need to look at it.
Okay. Commissioner Starley?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I did take a little hike out there. It's in my district and I wanted to see the condition of it. However, I did not crawl under to see what the underside looked like. But I'm wondering, what's the purpose? What would be the purpose of putting 30,000 into it?
Well, because right now we're not sure what the condition of the bridge is. The issue is this particular structure was relocated. I believe initially it was a vehicular bridge. And I think, if I remember right, sometime in the 60s or something like that. It's actually a little fuzzy as to when. It got relocated into a pedestrian bridge to its current location. It was also redecked, meaning they put on brand new decking in 2009. The issue with that is we don't know the dead load increase on this bridge. So the bridge itself most bridges get inspected annually to give us a condition rating to make sure that it's still safe. Since this thing has not been inspected since 2009, you know, and the nature of the bridge itself being steel and being a truss, those are especially, what do I want to say, sensitive to some critical failures. You know, it's tough to gauge exactly how safe it is. I understand it's been there for a while, but from a safety standpoint, it's something that I think needs to be looked into and determined whether or not it is safe or not.
Mm-hmm. The decking
Officially.
looks good. Yeah, the decking still looks good. I mean, there's a couple boards missing. It's very
Sure.
wide. So will it ever be used? But surface or using maybe a small type vehicle to service the hiking trail?
I honestly can't tell you that right now. I know, you know, if that's something that is desired, you know, that's something that can be considered in the repair recommendations or replacement. It just ultimately, it depends what we want the use of it to be. Also, that being said, it is a county bridge currently. There have been discussions about turning it over to forestry or, you know, Lutzen. I'm not sure. That discussion still needs to take place. The issue with keeping it a county bridge is kind of buried in the proposal and some other descriptions is a Minnesota statute. And in order for it, I believe in order for it to remain a county bridge, it has to be at least 20 feet wide. Currently, it's 16 feet wide. So we don't meet that. So there's kind of some things in the future that will need to be hashed out. But for now, the study is a great starting point to help make some of these determinations.
Right, and that probably needs to be done. Right now, it's tremendously wide for any hikers.
Correct.
You don't need anything that wide. But so I would, certainly support to go ahead with the study and find out what the purpose is. If it's beyond just hiking.
Very good. I don't have any questions or comments, so could we entertain a motion? I will entertain a motion to go ahead and authorize the highway department to go ahead with this bridge study.
I'll second.
Oh, excuse me. I would entertain a motion, so thank you.
I'll make a motion to go ahead
good.
and have the
Thank you,
have the highway
Commissioner.
department do the study and then come up
Good.
with some discussion after that.
Right. Okay, very good.
Sounds
Support?
great. Thank everybody.
Yeah, support.
I'll support it. I'd like to discuss a little bit more.
Go ahead.
Well, it seems like our options are it's just the future of it's very unclear. We don't know if it's going to stay as a county bridge. The need / use of it is also unclear. And so I really am hesitant to, I recognize we need to look at it. I just don't know as far as priorities are concerned where this goes. Like I would almost be more comfortable marking it, labeling it closed. I don't know if that's the most responsible thing.
For what it's worth, that would close off the Superior Hiking Trail.
Right.
So I'm not sure how people would use that then.
Yeah. You couldn't get across the Poplar River.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, we have to stop here and go to the public hearing, so we'll come back to this. So as it stands right now, we have a motion to go ahead with this. We have support, but there's still some discussion that was brought up by Commissioner Mills. So Commissioner Mills, do you want to withdraw your support?
I just want to continue discussion.
Okay, very good. Okay, then we will close this part of go on recess for our 9:30 public hearing, which is going to start in about 20, 30 seconds. For those of you out there, before we start the meeting, you can connect with us at the Zoom meeting link that was put on our agenda. And so at this time, I guess I'll open it up to anyone that wants to speak. And Administrator Rogers or someone there that has better control of the Zoom, do you see anyone that wants to speak?
There's no one in person here, and it looks like
I see someone popping up. Yeah.
there looks to be 3 people. Somebody RESPE, Jay Denny, and Flannery Delaney. All are people I don't know. So I'm assuming.
Okay, it could be Rachel SB, but I'm not sure. Okay, so let's just go. I see a person next to Lisa.
Yep,
From
Flannery Delaney, I think.
Is that Miss Flannery?
Yes.
Okay, so oh, it's Flannery. I think
My first name is Flannery. Yeah.
Great. Okay, I
Yeah.
only caught the Flannery. So would you like to go ahead and speak at this time?
I was just on to listen related to the Little Ollie Road,
Okay.
in case there were questions related to that. But I know Sarah
okay.
Kempinen is our county coordinator,
Right.
and she was calling in. She wasn't going to use Zoom, I don't think.
Okay, so Attorney Hickens you have your hand up. I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's certainly under your power to decide how the public hearing may proceed, but one way that has seemed to work well in the past is that we start with staff and commissioner discussion. The staff can present what the issue is and what action is being requested of the commissioners, and then we can move on to public comment, and just that presentation may answer questions or concerns that the public has, or maybe raise questions that they wish to ask during their testimony or question period. That might give us some more time for other people to.
Thank you. I was looking at the literal interpretation on the agenda.
Oh, sure.
And thank you. No, and I believe that this belongs to Brady Powers.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, I'll just give a little preface. This is a public hearing to consider a subordinate service district in the Little Ollie Lake area. There's a petition by the property owners in that area to establish the subordinate service district for summer and winter road maintenance for portions of the Lima grade where it meets the Gunflint Trail, there down to Little Ollie Road, and there to the intersection of Poplar Creek Drive. And you should be able to see the map, which is actually, for this purpose, it's the definition of the territory that they wish to include in the subordinate service district. So the roads leading to the red outlined area are the roads to be serviced, and the red outlined area is the territory that receives those services and would pay the costs of that. And in the proposal, they're proposing that all of the owners within that red area be included, with one provision, one exception. One of the owners, you'll see that if you can see it large enough, is property ID 52408-4300, who does not have access to those roads, has chosen not to be a part of the group to this point when they have done their own plowing, and has chosen not to have exercise an easement to that road and does not wish to. So this would include all of the property owners who have easements, which excludes that one. And that ID is actually, you'll see 3 little areas that are all included in that same parcel ID. Up in the far left, it's 7631 is the owner number. And then you'll see a little island with that same owner number. And then on the right, also on the border of Little Ollie, is that same owner number again. So those three little sections are the same parcel. So everyone else within that area supported this, and they have all voted in favor of Sarah Kempinen as their representative. And Sarah, I believe, is on by phone if there are any specific questions from the public.
Okay. I would assume that concludes your presentation, Auditor Powers?
It does.
Okay. So I guess at this point in time, I will then call for anyone from the public that would like to comment on this, and then we'll turn it over to the commissioners for discussion. Doesn't seem to be any. So let's go to commissioners. We'll do a roll call for questions, comments, or anything that you received, or as far, especially if you're in that district. We'll start with Commissioner Dukirk.
Yeah, thank you. My only concern was having a public hearing during COVID and whether or not people were able to speak. Obviously, you all remember our last subordinate service district turned into a huge amount of people that wanted to talk. So sounds like everyone is in cooperation on this. So I'm comfortable with the board moving forward on it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, very similar comments as Commissioner Dukirk. I'm sorry, Brady, my audio is kind of going in and out some. You said there were some exceptions, and there are exceptions in that they're not part of the subordinate service district. Is that right?
There's one within the territory. So subordinate service district has to define a territory, and so the map defines the territory. But in this case, they want to define it as those that have ownership in the territory and also have easement to the roads serving it. And there's one exception, one parcel that does not have easement and does not wish to be a part of it at this time. So I think, and the point of defining it that way would be, let's say this person sells to someone else who chooses to exercise or gain an easement to that road, would then be a part of it without having to have another public hearing if you would so define it that way.
Okay.
Thank you, that's all.
Commissioner Starley, questions, comments?
Thank you. No, I don't have any questions. My comment would be that it's great to hear that a group gets together and agrees on something in their district, and with the option of somebody saying they didn't want to be a part of it. So I think they sound very well coordinated.
Okay. Very good. So I believe we can move forward. Unless I hear differently from Attorney Hicken, do we need to give this more time?
Sorry to interrupt again. I just want to make sure that every member of the public who is on this call has had an opportunity to speak. So I would ask that, Mr. Chair, that you ask anybody wishing to speak to unmute and maybe identify themselves by name, and just to make one last sweep through the room.
Sure. Okay. Before I do that, Commissioner Dukirk has your hand up. You have your hand up.
I do have my hand up. We currently have another motion on the table. So when you ask for public comment and end it, I don't think we can make a motion on this until we finish the last one.
Attorney Hicken, I think the question is a procedural one, but this is a public hearing. Would you clarify? I believe you're saying that we cannot take action on this because we had one in our other part of the board meeting. And I think this is a public hearing, so it might be different, but Attorney Hicken, you would know better than I.
It depends on how strictly you wish to interpret the bylaws, Mr. Chair. And we don't have bylaws, first of all. Or if somebody wishes to make an objection based on Robert's Rules of Order, a commissioner is welcome to do that, and you're welcome to decide based on that objection. As far as procedurally, how it's meant to occur, like any action that the commissioners take, which requires a public hearing, should only be taken after the public hearing is closed. So so every person has had a chance to ask questions. The commissioners have had discussion. So you can close your public hearing and then entertain a motion. And the order in which you entertain the motion, whether you wish to go back to the Highway Department motion or do the SGSD motion, Commissioner Dukirk has raised an objection that could certainly be valid under Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay. So I guess as chair, we'll close this meeting, public meeting. Not close it, but go into the board meeting. What's the proper term? Conclude the public hearing?
Were you going to offer an opportunity for people to unmute and?
Oh, I thought I did before, but I know you mentioned, okay, for last call, for anyone to call in or unmute and talk to the commissioners on this issue. Okay. So we'll now move on to our regular meeting again, and then we'll deal with the issue of the motion issue on the public hearing. And I believe Commissioner Dukirk, you are suggesting or moving that we go back to the bridge decision before we act on this. And I guess as chair, I have no problem with that unless someone else objects. Okay. So let's move back to the discussion on the bridge. And we left it as there was a motion and a second, but Commissioner Mills wanted further discussion. So I'll turn it back to Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess the long and short of it is, I would like, before we contract with LHB, I would like to reach out to our partners or potential partners as far as needs and use and or potentially sharing costs. I recognize that it is a straight up county bridge, and I recognize the value of our partners. But again, what I'm speaking to is concerns about priorities and within the county as a whole, as well as within the highway department on what we should be focusing on. So I don't know if there's room for that. I don't know about the timing of everything, but I think it could be a worthwhile thing to reach out about.
Commissioner Dukirk?
I agree with Dave on this, and I think if we vote against this and Robbie has to close the bridge, maybe our partners will be active in contacting us and wanting to work with us.
Commissioner Mills. Commissioner Mills, go ahead, you're recognized.
This may be on mute. Chairman Bersheim?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know the process, but closing would not be an option because of the fact that it interferes with the Superior Hiking Trail. And
Right.
as I know, when I have a hike back there, they would have no other way of getting across Poplar River. Would that be correct, Robbie?
To the best of my knowledge, yeah, you would have to, I don't know how you would do it, walk all the way down to Highway 61 and then back up, you know, the Ski Hill Road all the way up to that trailhead. That's the best of my knowledge with that, at least.
Right.
Commissioner Dukirk.
Chinny, that's my point exactly. The Superior Hiking Trail is not ours. And so if we want partners to work with us, what is ours is the bridge. So if we take no action at this point because it doesn't fit within our budget and it has to be closed, then maybe our partners will be a little more active getting it reopened.
Commissioner
So-
Dukirk, I don't, just to add to it, the, I know I had mentioned that the study of this bridge wasn't technically on our budget, but the funds that we do have available to us for these like consulting services for this type of stuff, we do have readily available. So we are able to, yeah, we are able to study this. It's not cutting into anything. It's not, I'm not asking for more money or anything like that. This is just to give you all, you know, hopefully get your blessing for us to do this, to go ahead with, because I don't think it was on any agenda that we had presented before.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to speak to this. I think it's worthwhile information to have, and definitely it can be covered in the budget, but I don't think we could make good decisions going forward unless we know the condition of the bridge. And I think there's a public safety issue here as well. I don't know, we may have agreements with these other entities, and if we just say we're gonna close it, I would assume there could be a process for that as well. Is that correct, Robbie? You don't know, but.
To the best of my knowledge, if it's a county bridge, you know, we have the say of closing it. Now, that being said, that would be pretty inconsiderate of, you know, Lutzen, the Cycling Association, the Superior Hiking Trail. I mean, quite a few entities, forestry even. I believe, what's the big bike race, the 99er?
Right.
That runs through here. You know, I believe it uses that bridge. You know, so now you're talking about getting rid of or altering the route of that event. There are a number of things that closing the bridge would drastically affect. And that's not something I would prefer to do. Like I had mentioned, this is something that we have the funds available to us, without going into the red, without digging into anything, you know, extraneous. And so, you know, I guess we'll just, yeah, leave it up to your guys' decision making there.
Okay, Commissioner Mills, I think we'll turn it to you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was just wondering about, sorry, my audio is all over the place. I was just wondering about the priorities. It sounds like this money has been set aside already. It was put on the list. And I think we should go ahead. You know, depending on what this study finds, we're going to have to reach out to partners and go through some process there. But I guess step one is just to evaluate and see what we got. My concern, I think, as I said before, was just priorities. But it sounds like this was already put in on the list of things to look at, and so I don't want to. I'm not looking to disrupt or to hold anyone hostage or anything like that. I was just trying to look at our options.
Okay. So,
and Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dukirk had her hand when I had mine up.
Yes,
as well.
and I'll go to her next. Commissioner Dukirk, do you still want to speak to this?
Thanks, Commissioner Mills, for noticing that I'm here. And I was gonna say the same thing that Dave was gonna say. It's not my audio that's messed up, just so you know. It's called Four Dogs. Sorry about that background noise. Yeah, Dave couldn't say it any better than I could, and I have no intent of holding anyone hostage. And I'm not saying to shut down the bridge to ruin people's lives. I'm just saying that, you know, the responsibility shouldn't be completely ours, but I'm fine with us assessing it and it makes more sense.
Okay, so we have had a motion, we had a second. So I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Starley,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukirk,
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim's aye, then we'll go ahead with the bridge study. Thank you. Okay.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to Robbie too for walking us through this.
My pleasure, anytime.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the, let's see what time we got. Let's take about a 7-8 minute break. It's about that time. And then we'll move on to the assessor. Okay, so let's convene in about, well, let's give it 9 minutes. We'll convene at 10 o'clock.
Has everyone else's connection been fine?
So far, so good. Yeah. Is
Yeah,
it the cold weather?
you did freeze up a little bit in there, David.
Yeah, so I'm outdoors clearly, but at a neighbor's house who's got the fiber. And
Yeah.
then my daughter is actually doing distance learning at a different neighbor's house, but in the neighborhood. But also having glitchy stuff going. So I don't know if it's a neighborhood connection thing, or I don't know, but I guess we got to talk to True North. I'm just
Maybe it's
guessing.
the
It's first
wind.
day of school, everyone's zooming, you know.
Mhm.
I see the trees moving. Maybe it's the wind.
That could be.
I'm
know-
in Lisbon, Dave, and I haven't had any issues. I know I was talking to Leah Ekstrom earlier today. She also works remotely, and we have a morning meeting by video. She had 3 kids all on their devices going to school for the first day, and she was in the
Wow.
morning with me, and it was working well. I think we're really lucky to have broadband, but
Oh, yeah.
maybe you have more kids going to school in your neighborhood than we do.
No, Bob, is it working okay for you? I just am wondering. Yeah. Huh.
Mine's
You're-
been working just fine. Because you're not too far from me, right?
It's just me.
I didn't even notice you freeze at all, Dave, so hopefully it was brief.
Dave, it's your magnetic personality has changed the force field.
You know, it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for that wind.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we've got everyone. Commissioner Dukirk, are you there? Yep, thank you. Commissioner Starley?
Yes.
Okay. We'll continue with the meeting. We'll go to our assessor.
Mr.
Bob
Chair?
Thompson. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we want to address the subordinate service district yet?
Yes, thank
now
you.
that
Oh,
we've
good.
taken care of the bridge
Yeah.
portion.
Thank you. Yes, I forgot that coming back. So we did have, I believe, a motion on that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I included a resolution
right.
in the board packet that was added yesterday, so
Okay,
just to approve that resolution.
okay. Commissioner Dukirk,
I'll make a motion to approve that resolution.
okay. Support,
Starley support.
okay. Roll call vote. Commissioner Dukirk,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Starley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bershheim, aye. Okay, now we'll go to, thank you, Commissioner
Thank you.
Mills. Go to our assessor, Bob Thompson. And I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and commissioners. So I do have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to share my screen if I can get it on the right one. And this is just kind of some general assessment information for Cook County. Now I got to get my PowerPoint controls open. All right. So is it showing on the screen there now?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So this, like I say, it's just a kind of a general overview of value trends classification, just some of the general changes from year to year, looking back, I think, to about 2005 for some of the numbers. You know, we'll look at what variables are affecting the taxpayer's bill. It's obviously the budget and levy that are set. And then also what plays into it is the tax capacity of the property and tax capacity of the other properties in the county. You could think of each taxpayer paying a slice of the pie, and the price of the pie is basically what's levied on the tax base. So between those two, you can determine what the taxpayer's tax bill is. And I don't know if Brady's going to be giving estimates or not in his report later, but I'll stick around and watch for that. The things that do affect it are the new construction, market value changes, classification shifts, tax capacity. I think one thing that you could probably say is going right now, the sales are really high. We have some really high dollar inland sales happening now. In fact, I see that there's one up the Gunflint Trail over $1 million. And it looks like the market's pretty hot right now. If you have certain segments like lakeshore property changing and other segments like vacant land not changing as much, then then it kind of shifts that tax burden as those adjustments are corrected in the assessments. So we'll look at all those numbers, and then I'll just kind of give you a general update from my office. And I do have our new hire here today. So at the end of this, you guys can get introduced to John Denny, our new appraiser. So this is it's somewhat, I think, misleading, but the numbers for new construction over the last 4 years, and this is looking at January 2nd of each year. So 2020, January 2nd, 2020, it'd be all the construction that we picked up during 2019. And then for that 2019 number, it's all the stuff that was built and happening during that 2018 summer into fall. And right now we have just under $10 million in permits that they actually give an amount for the new construction. A lot of those permits, I think it's 73 of 159 permits actually put a dollar amount on their projected new construction costs. A lot of times they leave that blank and it just shows zero on the permit. So I think that it's pretty common to see it kind of drop one year and then go up for a couple of years and drop another year, just because if you get a lot of projects started that then get finished the next year, and it's just the way it's being picked up is you have a couple of up years and then a down year and a couple of up years and a down year. But the new construction is actually, it's relatively low. I mean, there's just not a lot of contractors. I think there's a lot of people that still want to be having things built. They just don't have the means to do so. This next slide, this is total market value. And this number here you'll see is actually, it's about $10 million higher than the slide. And when I go back, looking back to 2005, this is the actual most up to date from our fall abstract numbers that we just submitted last week. Every September 1st, we have to submit our fall abstract, and that's where that number comes from. That's taxable property market value. So you can see the last 2 years, we've had quite an upward trend. And then I'll look going back a little further here. So now this just breaks down the townships. You can see there for 2017 to 18, there was like a drop in all but it looks like Schroeder. And really, I think what that was is just there wasn't enough to make an upward adjustment. So it was just the depreciation that's naturally happening on all the buildings that are in our records. But you can see for the last 2 years, we've been making upward adjustments pretty much across the board. Graham Ray didn't need to get one last year, but that was because it's probably because our quintile of 2019, we had everything dialed in pretty good. Now, from what I'm seeing, is a lot of the sales are selling above our EMVs. So we may be seeing another adjustment in Graham Ray at the end of this year, but until all those sales are in, we don't know. Now, this is looking at the market value, total county market value going back to 2005. You can see we're getting up there, and that number, like I said, is about $10 million low. This is from our February abstract. So we're still working, all the way up till the June 18th County Board of Appeals. We're still changing things in the system. So you can see we're getting pretty close to back where we were in 2009 and 10. And I would say after this year, we might be getting even closer to that. But like I say, we'll have to see at the end of the year what everything amounts to. This is tax capacity. You may be familiar with it. We talked a little bit about it last year after we'd had some changes, but you can see we've had an increase from 19 to 20 and even more of an increase from 18 to 19. So I'll get closer in here on this. You can see it was less than 1%. I mean, for many years, I think for about 8 years straight, since we had the decline of 2010, they were generally under 1% increase for the tax capacity. That's just going to be new construction, market value increases, just little changes like that increase the tax capacity. And in 2019, obviously what had happened was a large shift from the vacation rentals going from seasonal rec into residential. Now in 2020, we have some of those going back to seasonal rec. So we lost a lot of tax capacity with that. But then at the same time, you had about 170 some go commercial. So there's a gain in tax capacity there. Plus with the market value changes in new construction, we had an overall increase of about 4%. That's based off of, using the summary report from 2019 and the summary report from 2020. Here you can see is a little bit better of a look at each classification kind of shifting. The light blue is seasonal rec. It went from $800 million in 2017 to now it's just over $733 million. And if you look at the numbers for like residential, it went way up from 2017 to 2019, and now it's kind of dropped back down, but still, there's still an increase in both of those. When you look at the total values, we've had an increase every year. That's that dark green box. Another interesting thing to look at here is the commercial tax capacity. There's about a $51 million, almost $52 million increase in commercial tax capacity. You can see we had, or commercial value, you can see we had 70 million before, now we've got 121 million. I will pull up, we have a fiscal disparities report that I think I got about maybe a month or so ago. This doesn't take into account the 2020 changes. This is looking at 2019 tax capacity. So you can see Cook County had a 95 base rate there of like 284,000 in tax capacity. At the 120 million, it's that 1,657,000. So they look at the increase from the base year 95 to the current year, which would have been last year's tax capacity. And then they calculate your contribution distribution amounts. So we don't know what that's going to do yet. I think that we probably could try and get some of those numbers from the other counties and put together our own estimate of what might happen, but the formula is really complex. It's not something that's very easy to calculate. And I can also send that to you guys if you guys would like to see that fiscal disparities report. Let me get back to my PowerPoint. So basically the changes we had very little new construction, like I say, about 1.1% for new construction. I think it's more typical to see up even or higher than 3% in some areas. The value growth, it's obviously more significant on lakeshore property. Those seem to be increasing faster than the non-lakeshore and the vacant land. Stuff that have improvements on it, if you've got basically a well and a septic, those are in really high demand right now, anything that's livable. So also in 2019, in addition to the 690 vacation rentals that changed to residential, we had all that platted vacant land. So that's also where we got some of that increased residential side of the valuation. And then in this year, 2020, we had 513 go back to seasonal rec and 177 with commercial use classifications. Now that doesn't mean all of them are completely commercial. Some of them just had like a bunkhouse that was rented and that got changed to commercial. Some of them have small spaces operating that were changed to commercial, but they have a split classification. So it's not totally 177 units, but it's 177 tax records that had some sort of change. That also would include those partial shares, the owners who own, there's 4 owners of one property. So the last slide I have here is just kind of going over some of the changes in my office. We had the retirement of Todd Smith in June. We promoted Rachel Espy to the assistant county assessor, filling Todd's vacancy. We've just hired John Denny. He started on the 17th of August. He filled the vacancy created by Rachel's promotion. And now we've had the resignation of Lisa Kerr, unfortunately. So, we have a lot that we have to get done. I know we have talked in the past about trying to reduce staff in the office, and I think that was what when Todd took over as the assessor that we thought we could operate with 3 people, but I think there's just too much to get done up front. We have manuals that have to be written. We're still behind on the quintile from a shift in how they operated, how they did the quintile going back to about 2016. We've been behind, and we should be caught up by the end of next year if we just do everything in our quintiles as they come up. We were going to try and do some extra ones this year, and we may do some desktop reviews of, there's 175 properties in the West End that are out of compliance. So if we can complete our quintile and have enough time to try and do those other 175 in the West End, then we'd be compliant on January 2nd, 2021. But if not, in the worst case scenario, we'd be compliant in 2022. So that would mean that in the last 5 years, we didn't go outside the plan, outside of the playbook, and we just did everything we had to for those years as they came up. So, you know, I guess I wanted to introduce the idea of hopefully having like a dual role appraiser / technical clerk. That was what I had asked in the restructuring of my office, was to have somebody who could go out and do those physical inspections of properties and also kind of fill the role of, you know, answering the phones in the office, primarily, you know, being kind of that primary technical clerk role, but having that ability to go out and assist with the appraisal process and inspect properties. Also being able to do some subjective decision making on determining grades of properties and you know, classifications and valuation type things. So right now, Pam and I are working on creating a job description that would fit this. It would most likely end up being a job graded below what we just hired, John Denny. So that's what we're working out right now. It would be working under the supervision or the direction of probably the assistant county assessor. And essentially it would just be kind of an entry level position. When we do it as a trainee like this, for 1 year, we can use them as an appraiser out in the field inspecting properties and get them into that license, that CMA license. So they won't need to apply with that under their belt. We can give them a year to get that. So we're working on the job description. I think it'll go hopefully before the personnel committee next week. And then we'll be probably coming to the board and asking for approval to post a position on the meeting on the 22nd. So I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and then I'll see if John is available. We've been having a little bit of troubles with having a laptop with audio and video. So he is going to join from Rachel's computer.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier the audio wasn't working. Yeah, the audio is not working for John, but unfortunately, but you can see John and Rachel there. So John's our new appraiser. He came from Lake County. He was an appraiser there for 2 or 3 years. He started shortly after I started in Cook County. I met him at one of our Christmas party. It must have been the first Christmas party, like 2017. And John's a real good addition to our office. He's been out doing inspections. In fact, on day one, John was out, and I think he did like 30 properties on day one. Just, you know, that's where we had the need. We need somebody out checking these properties out. We have an obligation to look at a property every 5 years. And, you know, John's kind of hit the ground running for us. So if it's not raining out, John's kind of out pounding the pavement, you know, just getting some of those quintile inspections done. I believe he's done all of Devil Track Lake already. And he's kind of working some of that more rural area now, so that if we get early snow like Denver's getting, then we'll have that stuff out of the way, and we can kind of continue working along the Highway 61 and some of those roads that are plowed.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Well, welcome to the new staff member there, and also I would like to thank Rachel for her work and congratulations on her promotion. So hopefully we can move forward with this process of getting staffing up to adequately fulfill our responsibilities in the assessor's office. So with that presentation, I'll turn it over to questions or comments, and we'll start with Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. So in the restructure of your office, in creating this new position, that's within your budget?
So when Lisa Kerr was moved back into the office, it kind of was like we almost undid what was originally done in 2016, where Lisa took up a new role of the Parks and Trails / Land Commissioner, and then when Tim kind of came and approached me about shifting her back into my office with some assessor part-time role and land commissioner, that was what we did in January of this year. In fact, I think her first day in my office was like January 7th of this year. And the restructuring that I had basically asked for was, I felt like we needed to have somebody out inspecting properties with a license and having the ability to do the data entry, the subjective data entry. So essentially what it was just asking if Lisa wanted to kind of go back into that role of being an appraiser, and eliminating the land commissioner / technical clerk position. So that was the proposed restructuring, was to do that. And now this would actually be a change. This would be a trainee position where hopefully we can bring someone in with some good skills. I know we had an applicant when John Denny applied for the appraiser position, the one that was open back in August. We had a really good applicant that didn't have a CMA license, and Pam and I had both looked at that resume and thought, well, this is a very good candidate, but they just weren't there. And for this position, this person would be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. And then also for putting this good assessment together of the potential of what you've done and the potential of what's probably going to happen in Cook County. So it's very succinct, and thank you for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Commissioner DeKirk.
Thanks for the presentation, Bob. It was very thorough.
Okay, Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Bob, for the presentation. It's good information and just good perspective on where things are at. Yeah, I'm really curious where the state goes with the short-term rental classification and how that will change things. But I just want to recognize your office's hard work in getting the assessments done so that we can be on track and be in compliance and really try to stabilize our it just helps stabilize everything, and I think we can that helps the taxpayers out greatly. So thank you for your work.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Mills. I have one question for the assessor. When you look at that presentation chart of Cook County value of by classification, where you have the three areas, whether it's SRR or residential NTC or commercial. On that chart for 2020, I have a question, and maybe it pertains to a clarification or an interpretation, which is dangerous. But I was looking at those numbers for 733,054,900 for seasonal, and then 633,275,100 for residential. Would that be safe to assume or make an assumption that when you do those percentages, you sort of end up that our seasonal assessment values or our revenue from seasonal properties is about 53% compared to about 47% for residential? Do you understand my question, Bob?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's not that cut and dry because, right. Well, this is tax capacity. So the value tax capacity, no, this is value. This is not tax capacity. So when you look at it, the residential has a higher, in a lot of cases, has a lot higher tax capacity rate than seasonal. So, it's tough to say, but I mean, I know they've kind of used those numbers in the past where it was like 58% seasonal rec or something like that.
Right.
I could look that up and give you those specific numbers of where the revenue is that's more of a tax capacity. And, I'm looking more or less at value in class.
Okay, good. So yes, if we could, because I think that would be good for the public to know, how much of our property taxes are covered by seasonal taxes versus residential.
Right. Well, and you can
I
see.
know we used to use
if you look at
57,
that
58%.
If you look at that total value of like 1.488 million or 1,488 million,
Right,
that's not the total county market value because you have all the, the resorts, restaurants, all the things that are missing out of those. This is just looking at those specific 3 classes because that's kind of where we had a lot of shifting going on.
okay,
Now it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the, with the $121 million of commercial.
right.
I mean, those properties are going to pick up a significant portion of the tax bill of the levy.
Okay. So at some point, could you give us a better interpretation of how that just goes by, approximate percentage of who contributes to what to the pie?
Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly can. It's just a matter of looking at the tax capacity of these 3 classifications.
Okay. Very good. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for the update. For all the work that you've done there, Bob, it's appreciated. And you and your staff. We'll go to land services. So we're going to first part of that agenda is the Parks and Trails Commission appointments. And we have before us an appointment of Robert DeShaw, Bobby as representatives from Grand Portage, and Mary Lou Sorensen as representatives to the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission effective immediately. And I would turn it over to Tim.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you,
joining
Mr.
us.
Chair. Commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes, speak a little louder, it might help.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Wait, we'll hold it.
Okay. Yeah, this both of the items that I have for you this morning are Parks and Trails related. The first one, Mr. Chair, as you described, is appointing a couple positions. We had a resignation from the commission from District 3 earlier in the year. In the spring, Mickey Brazell resigned from that, and we have been looking, and we did get somebody who is a resident within District 3, and that is Mary Lou Sorensen. And then former Commissioner Robert Deschamps basically did volunteer to go ahead and represent Grand Portage on that commission as well. So basically, just here to go ahead and request that you go ahead and appoint both Robert DeShaw and Mary Lou Sorensen to the Parks and Trails Commission respectively from Grand Portage and District 3.
Okay, I'm just going to open it up. Is there any questions or comments? Please state or raise your hand. Then I would entertain a motion to make that appointment of those 2 people.
So moved, Commissioner Dukirk.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dukirk. Second.
Starley, support.
Okay. Roll call vote. Commissioner Dukirk,
Aye.
Commissioner Storley,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim. Approved unanimously. Let's go on to the creation of Passion Pit Task Force.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Chair. This has been an issue, for longstanding residents. The Passion Pit has percolated up and down with regards to concerns about noise, traffic, parties, littering, trespass, issues like that over many, many, many years. In fact, I used to live down on that stretch of Old Shore Road, and I am familiar with some of the issues that had transpired down there. And the area, the Passion Pit, is the area that is down on the east end of Old Shore Road, just down from the DNR building. And it's that access. And frankly, in taking a look at ownership of property there, the county has only a 35-foot access stretch from there off of Old Shore Road down to the beach area. But over the summer, if you are aware, there were more concerns that had come up. And by and large, there are seasonal residents that live in that area, but as time goes, more seasonal are turning into permanent. And there was just concerns over the amount of traffic, noise, trespass, and those kinds of issues. There had formed some folks getting together to discuss, what might possibly be done down there. There hasn't been any kind of official tending to that site. There aren't any porta pots down there. There's no traffic control. There's no signage. There's no anything. And so a group of folks had gotten together and discussed the issues and brought forward the discussion to the Parks and Trails Commission back in June or July. And we talked about it. The Parks and Trails Commission at that point wanted that group to go back and come back again for further discussion about the issue, to kind of clarify and narrow and look at possible directions of what might be done and such. And so then that group did come back in the August meeting. You have a letter that Stacy Drillard had crafted with regards to that site, because not only are there concerns with regards to trespass and issues like that, but there's also on the positive side concerns for the historical preservation of the area in conjunction with maybe that site and the Chippewa City Church that's there, and the artist, the world-renowned artist George Morrison, who hails from that area. And so there was concern that could we combine those issues and move forward with something that would possibly have better control over that area, or some oversight, and preserving some of the natural and historic heritage of that particular area. Through a lot of discussion, what the Parks and Trails Commission determined to do was they felt that it was important that instead of just coming to the Board of Commissioners with a blanket request to say, okay, well, let's start a committee and move forward in this particular direction, the Parks and Trails Commission determined rather to recommend the establishment of a short-term task force, basically one that's be about 60 days in duration from the time that it started, to basically meet with all of the different stakeholders, all the different groups, really kind of formulate and shape what all the issues are, and all the prospective courses of action can be related to that area and that site, and then report back to ultimately the Board of Commissioners, but reporting through the Parks and Trails Commission. So that is the recommendation of the Parks and Trails Commission to the commissioners, is that you go ahead and establish a very small task force that would operate for 60 days. And basically they felt that the membership should be small, but that the outreach should be wide, so that it would make sure that this group would, again, connect with all of the stakeholders to be able to frame the issues and recommend any kind of courses of action. They recommend that the membership would include one county commissioner, one member from the city of Grand Marais, a representative from the Parks and Trails Commission, and it was their recommendation that I would be that person representing the Parks and Trails Commission and the staff member. And then they also wanted to include a person or a citizen at large, which it's the Parks and Trails recommendation would be Stacy Drillard, since she's been very instrumental in discussions with this group, and she had crafted that letter and has intimate familiar knowledge with that. And so I guess with that kind of opening, I would just entertain any questions that you might have.
Okay, so I think you're asking for us to affirm your appointment as well as Stacy, and then appoint a county commissioner representative. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. And first, kind of agreeing to establish this task force to begin with for the period of a 60-day work period.
Okay, so that will be the first issue to go ahead with this task force.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll open it up for questions, and we'll try to take this in two parts then to approve the proposed plan to have those members be a task force, and short term come back in approximately 60 days for a report. And then our second task would be to appoint a county commissioner rep. Okay, so let's keep the conversation, please, to just the creation of this task force. Thoughts or questions? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tim. What's with the 60 days? Why not longer? Or, I mean, seems fast.
It does, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mills. The concerns is that this task force was really intended not to wrestle with all of the issues and to arrange for leasing or anything like that with properties. The purpose of this is to just frame all of the issues together. Since there's a lot of different issues floating out there, the purpose is just to narrow down the issues, and they may come back with the recommendation to establish a committee, an ongoing committee. And it's kind of anticipated that may be the direction that it would go, but just the centralized initial function of what this task force would just be something to frame all of the issues together and to recommend a course to go.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Let's do a roll call. Commissioner Dukirk?
No questions. It was a great discussion at the Parks and Trails Committee, very thorough. And just to address Dave, this is just a first step in many, many, many steps, and it's consistent with what we have done in the past for other committees.
Okay, Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Yes, I believe task force are good and they can come up with more directions. I would hope they'd be looking into the property that MnDOT owns. If the county owns 35 feet, how much does MnDOT own in order to think about acquiring that? So I'm sure they'll look into that, but that was something that I thought was interesting, that we don't know how much, or at least it's not in the report here, how much they own.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion as chair to go ahead with the appointment of this task force as presented.
Motion.
Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Dukirk. Roll call vote. Commissioner Dukirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Mills?
Aye.
Commissioner Storley?
Aye.
Commissioner Bershheim, aye. Next issue is to appoint a county commissioner representative to serve on this task force. I would like to mention that I was at that meeting, and that Carrie Johnson did mention in that meeting, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Historical Society would like to have the county commissioner, who is the representative of the Historical Society, to be appointed to this committee because of the relationship with the Chippewa City Church, and the Historical Society owns that property. And so that was mentioned in that meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Nelson?
Mr. Chair, yeah, certainly Carrie did express that inclination from the perspective of the Historical Society. It was kind of noted that, yes, there are other entities and such that should and definitely have representation. We're looking at, the broader scope of the committee. If a committee is recommended, that we would make sure that there's certainly broad representation on that particular committee, and that this task force would indeed reach out to all of the entities, including the Historical Society, but it's completely up to the commissioners in terms of who you would want to represent on this particular task force. 100% commissioner determined.
Okay. Now, just to add before we open it up, that it's also in the District 2 district as well, which may or may not have bearing. So questions or comments on the appointment of the county representatives? And Commissioner Dukirk?
Just want to note I'm willing to be on this task force since I'm on the planning commission. And also just wanted to back up what Commissioner Bershheim said about the Historical Society. Carrie was there and was very informative. And if this someday becomes a committee that the task force may recommend, absolutely there should be a Historical Society and or a commissioner who sits on both that should be part of it. But again, right now, this is just a task force putting everything together. So I think any one of us can sit on that since it's a short window.
Okay, and I would like to state that I'd be willing to serve on it as well. Being Historical Society rep, I've been involved in this somewhat, and I'm sure others have as well. But it's also in District 2. And it's the commissioner's district, but there is a difference of, thoughts here, and I respect that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to appoint a county commissioner to serve in this task force.
Motion to appoint myself.
Is there support to that? Is there support? Okay, no.
Mr.
support.
Chair, I
Yes.
could not hear the motion.
Commissioner Dukirk made a motion to appoint herself.
I can support that.
Okay,
And I would like to discuss more.
okay. All right, let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Mills, would you like to start that? Go ahead, Commissioner Mills.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Chair. And so what I'm hearing is that Commissioner Dukirk would like to be on the task force. She sits on the Parks and Trails Commission as well as the Planning Commission. And Commissioner Chair Bershheim would like to sit on the task force, and he sits on the Historical Society as well as represents District 2. And so if my understanding of the task force is correct, it is a short task force to just really hone in on what the issues are, and then bring as many partners to the table as possible, and then either create recommendations to move forward, or just flesh it out, or recommendations to flesh it out. Is that the long and short of things?
That is correct.
I would just like to comment to speak up for the appointment for District 2 that we already have someone from the Parks and Trails Commission on this task force, and which is Tim Nelson. Okay, Commissioner Dukirk.
Just a little background in history. When we do task force like this, it is the committee. So if it was planning and zoning, it would be Tim Nelson because he's planning and zoning, and then it would be a member from planning and zoning. So having me on it is just consistency with how we've done things in the past. If this moves forward to committee, if the task force decides that this moves forward to committee, I 100% support Commissioner Bershheim being appointed as the member to serve on the committee. So my reasoning for this is just past history, and obviously the board can change and not do what has been done historically. That's fine. That's obviously up to the rest of you. I'm just going with consistency of what we've done in the past. This task force will make no decisions about what will or will not be done with Passion Pit. That is something that a committee would work on. And that would be something that obviously Mr. Bershheim would have a lot of input on, being that it's in his district and he's on the Historical Society. So obviously his input at that time and at that level is very, very important.
I would just like to reiterate and respect your thoughts on that, Commissioner Dukirk, but the Historical Society made a request that the appointment of this task force should have someone that is the county representative to the Historical Society. So I'm just going to leave that on record. Commissioner Dukirk, go ahead.
You are absolutely correct. And when it was brought up that Stacy Drulard be on the task force, I specifically asked Carrie if that meant that the Historical Society would not be on it, and asked specifically if Stacy was on the Historical Society, and she said she was fine with not having a representative from the Historical Society if that meant Stacy was on there. So she did step back and did say that going forward, the committee having representation was more important than the task force.
I don't, is that your interpretation, Tim, of what Stacy said? And Rena Rogers? No, I guess you weren't there. Yeah. I don't recall that, but help me with that, Tim. I think she was appointed because of all the history that she's had and the work that she's done at large, but I don't think it was understood that she was appointed to represent the Historical Society because Carrie Johnson made that request. Hate to put you on the spot, but I think we have a difference of recollection here.
Well, really, the Historical Society, I think that what's very clear is that the Parks and Trails Commission did not want to create. I think there was some interest for a spot on the task force to be fulfilled by specifically a Historical Society representative, and the Parks and Trails Commission determined, okay, no, what we want to do is keep this one limited, so we would want to keep it down to 4 or 5 at the absolute maximum, and they're recommending 4, and they recommended that just a county representative, the city representative, Parks and Trails, and the citizen at large. And they determined that Stacy would be a good representative from the citizen at large. And, frankly, it is, 100% commissioner action in terms of who you would like representing you on that task force. I mean, one thing is clear that it is a very short-term task force. It is 60 days from the time that we start. And so it would be folding then most likely into a committee recommendation afterwards.
Okay, so I think that clarifies it. Any other discussion? We'll have a motion. Commissioner
Chairman Bersheim. So Tim, when is this going to start? Because 60 days, I mean, we're already to the middle of September. So is there a time frame when this is going to start? The task force?
Right, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Storley. Basically, the way in my mind, because I would be also the staff person facilitating this process, that this would be, if it's approved today, it would be started immediately. And so I would contact the individuals, and then it would be, I would recognize it to be 60 days from the time that we would be able to start in our first meeting to the last one. And I think that was kind of supported by Stacy Drulard. She indicated that, she would not be able to commit more than 60 days to that process, and that we should keep it within that time frame. So that's when I figured we would start. We would start as soon as possible after its inception here, adoption from the Board of Commissioners, and 60 days from that standpoint. Understanding, yes, the time is running out over the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, because it would be, you're going probably into November now. So I don't know the time frame in terms of Chairman Bersheim with everything on his plate, what that would do for your schedule too.
I think we'll all be busy, yeah. But yeah, we'll all be busy, yeah. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was just trying to wrap my head and get the whole situation in there. And whereas I, of course, highly respect your opinion, Chairman Bersheim, and your historical emphasis on historical aspect, I think for the sake of consistency and congruency that it makes a lot of sense for this short task force to have Commissioner Dukirk on that, being more involved with the Planning and Parks and Trails Commission, but of course with the intention of bringing historical society representation, and I would think that would be excellent to have a commissioner and historical society representative in the future. But for this, it's more of a strike force to really to hopefully form something that's going to be moving ahead. So so I basically I'm comfortable with my second still, and would like to move that.
Okay.
But again, I greatly appreciate your willingness and your perspectives there.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and support, and we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukirk,
Aye.
Commissioner Storley.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Bersheim is no, nay, just to represent the Historical Society, and I certainly respect Commissioner Dukirk to do this, and yeah, I got plenty of things to do, but I felt I should represent the Historical Society's wishes in this, and it's unfortunate that you didn't follow that. Okay. With that, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Auditor, budget update from Brady. I believe you sent out some information for us.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So mostly I wanted you to see the effect of any levy increase now. So I've included, first of all, the budget and levy with these assumptions that with the health insurance increase, no step increases beyond what anyone has earned through the end of 2020. And then I've put in a contingency number of $250,000. With that, you can see that the proposed levy is about $280,000 more than our final levy for 2020. And the increase is about 2.71% if you added 250,000 to this baseline. And then on that levy calculator, this will tie into what you saw with the assessor. It's a little bit different. So if everybody's looking at that page that says 2021 budget and levy, and it shows adopted 2020, no cost of living, proposed levy 2021, and then it shows with a $250,000 contingency for 2021. And then it goes down through just the expense amounts of each of our major funds, all bond funds summarized together. And then the contingency is thrown in with the capital building amounts, just for expediency in this report. And then it shows also what the highway department has proposed for using some of its own reserves, equipment reserves. And then below that, you can see the levy increase with the $250,000 way on the right. You have that $280,000 increase. But then you have the new tax capacity estimate, 18,207,000, which is about 5% higher than last year, which leads to a tax rate less than last year, even with the increase. If you look at the bottom at the tax rates, what we had last year, or actually the current year, but a 59% tax rate. This is just the county levy. If we'd had no cost of living, no contingencies for any change to that budget, then you would have had a drop of the rate of 56.517 because of the additional value that we calculated for this year. And with the contingency, it's still less than last year. We're at a drop of about 4%. Then if you go to the next page, anybody stop me if you're having any questions. The next page shows just what would happen to a taxpayer in various brackets of value of their property. What they're paying this year under the current tax rate, what they would have under this base scenario with no cost of living, no steps, and then what they would pay under the with a contingency of $250,000, and this is just for a homestead. And you can see that even with this contingency, $280,000 over 2020, there's a drop in all levels of about 2% because of that increase in valuation. Now, if anybody was watching the numbers very closely, you'll notice that what I'm using for tax capacity is not exactly what Bob was using, and that's because for tax, he presented the raw numbers for valuation and tax capacity, but for the actual tax that you pay, there are some complications like fiscal disparity. So this is attempting to use some of that change in fiscal disparity. The actual rate tax capacity, the actual tax capacity numbers actually has a reduction there for the fiscal disparity distribution or contribution amount. And then there's a little bit of fiscal disparity distribution, which also shows up on here. So this is, I'd say, a good approximation, not perfect, but a good approximation of what the taxes would be. But this again predicates that no one's had a change in their personal valuation. So you would see this slight drop if they've had no change in theirs. But obviously, a lot of people are going to have a change, which is partly why we have this increased valuation. So, but it's just a good indicator of the average. And just, you're going to have to make a decision the next meeting in 2 weeks from now to set your outer limit, let's say, on your levy. So I'll be talking either right now, or you each may contact me, or I'll be talking to the administrator for what you might want to see before you make that decision next week. In anticipation, you don't have it in front of you, but I added another 150,000 of contingency. So I've just got this in front of me. I've been doing this during the meeting. So what if we added 400,000 to that base levy? When you get to this page for the homestead, even with a $400,000 contingency, the average is still not paying what they paid for 2020 at all the various market value rates for a homestead. It's about 0.7% drop on average with a $400,000 contingency. So with that, I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you, Brady, for your work on this and continuous work. We'll start with comments or questions. We'll start with Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Brady. All of these scenarios, it looks like use 244,000 of the fund balance. Is that right?
That was the proposal by the Highway Department in their original budget that they sent up. They're planning to buy some equipment this year, and they have built up some reserves that they haven't spent. So That's what they wish to do, is to use that fund balance. Now, if we have these contingencies and if their expenses go up further, as the expenses would, be shared amongst various departments, that's a decision they'd be looking at again. But you'd have a say in that also. They may want to keep their levy at zero. That is to keep their levy at zero. By the way, that's what they put in, was to keep it equal with last year. And they may wish to do that. You may not wish them to use their fund balance. If, let's say, we put in a $400,000 contingency for the proposed. But in any case, that's where it's coming from. No one else has proposed to use any of their fund balance.
Yeah, just when fund balance, then it has to be made up. And so, I'm wanting to be very cautious with that. But looking at the tax capacities, it's encouraging. Looking at lodging tax and sales tax, a little less so, but I haven't seen any real recent numbers there. So, but we'll just try to get as much info as we can to move forward here.
Yeah, and as always, it's a two-step process. You want to define your highest potential in 2 weeks from now, so that you aren't caught flat-footed with what might happen later, but knowing that you can bring it down. But of course, not wanting to have that potential too high, because it kind of sets an expectation too. So if don't set it any higher than you would want to do it. So.
Well, there's the high expectations and the low expectations, and marry the two shall meet. But as long as we're talking about our setting our preliminary, it might be worth us looking at that not using that fund balance for the highway department if that's if we want to consider our setting our preliminary, we can't go any higher than that. I think we want to be as comprehensive as we can looking at things. So I would encourage us to look at that for preliminary, and then of course work down as best we can.
Commissioner Dukirk.
So Dave, when you say not using fund balance, are you asking the highway department to increase their request?
Go ahead, Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Dukirk. What I'm saying is, when it comes to, no, I'm not asking that necessarily. What I'm saying is, while we look at setting our preliminary levy, if some of these contingencies are in play, and Brady alluded to the highway department changing things up depending on how contingencies go, then it would behoove us to try to anticipate that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just to follow that a little bit, it's on topic. I know that we are encouraging, and we have sort of a policy we adopted to try to maintain our fund balance at 75%. And this is a question for Brady. What is our current estimate of our fund balance right now? I thought it was 76 something, or have you got an update on that?
With our audit, it's in draft form. It's not final, but it's essentially, I don't see any changes coming, and it's over 90% for those major operating funds. we had increases in the fund balance in all three of our major operating funds, general fund, highway, and human services. You probably heard of human services increase in their fund balance during their presentation. So yeah, we had a very positive year. So we're in pretty solid shape. And this is as of 12/31/19. It doesn't take whatever might happen for the rest of the year and early into next year for the the related to the pandemic.
Okay. So we're currently at 90% with our fund balance.
That's our snapshot, end of 2019.
Okay. All right, any Commissioner Storley, haven't heard from you. Questions or comments?
Well, one question would be, is the budget committee meeting before the end of September?
The advisory committee is meeting, yes, next.
Okay. So I'll be interested to hear what all of your input would be too from them.
Okay.
And it's encouraging about the fund balance, but we can't be too loose.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments for Brady Powers? I believe just, I'm sorry to take the, go ahead, Commissioner DeKirk.
I just wanted to say thank you to Brady and to all of the staff for the hard work. Just since I was elected, to get us in a position where we could actually get nailed by a pandemic and be able to look at a budget and a levy and be in this position. And although he would never say it, if our former administrator Cadwell was here, he'd say, "I told you so." He set us up to be able to deal with this. So thank you, everyone, all of the staff.
Okay. With that, we have the audit this afternoon, and I believe we're going to meet in your office. We're going to socially distance, Brady.
Either that or by telephone, we can go either way.
Oh, okay. I didn't get a message, so let me know, please.
As soon as we get off here, I have a couple of messages from the auditor's office. Something might change, so.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on to administrator updates.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, commissioners. Don't have a lot of updates today. I think as we heard from our emergency managers, our incident commanders this morning, where we've hit a place now where we've kind of done everything that we need to do, and we're just in a holding pattern operationally around the pandemic. People know people that can work at home are working at home, and we have good processes in place. The CARES Act spending continues to move forward. We're starting to distribute those funds. We're looking at increased ways to keep our buildings safe as people do return to work. So we're moving ahead with all of those things. I just want to remind everybody that next week is the Committee of the Whole, and we have two items on the agenda. One is Robbie, our highway engineer, come back and just review the current state of the transportation plan with the commissioners, just to kind of bring everybody back up to speed, because we haven't talked about it before they return back to receiving public comments. So that will be on the agenda. The other item is we're going to resume talking about the bylaws. And I think, as it was pointed out this morning, this is why we need bylaws. I just think this is an important discussion, and with elections coming up and some turnover in the board, and also with hopefully a new administrator coming on board, having that baseline of how meetings are conducted, and will be a good starting place with a lot of new people. So hopeful that we can there's not a lot of work out there to do that quickly and effectively at our next meeting. And other than that, I really don't have any other updates right now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for our administrator? Commissioner Dukirk?
I don't know if we ever do this. Maybe I've missed it, but we so often say thank you when we get an update from Grace and Mike and the other parties. And I know Myron's really good about thanking everyone that comes forward. So I apologize. Myron does thank you, but I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've been doing and stepping up and stepping in and doing 2 roles at one time. And then being the ever public servant and joining the school board and having that stress on your table. You have handled it very well during our meetings. So thank you very, very much.
Thank
Well
you.
said, well said, and deserving. Thank you, Commissioner Dukirk. Okay. We'll go to, we have commissioner reports. Any reports or updates from the commissioners? Meetings to note, we're going to have the interviews on Thursday. Matt team in the morning and commissioners in the afternoon starting at 1 o'clock, and they'll be on YouTube channel for the public that wants to sit in. And I don't think for our correspondence and menus, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Dukirk. And as always, thank you for
Chairman Bersheim?
Go ahead.
I just have a meeting to note. Is
Sure.
anyone going to be attending the communication meeting in the morning? No? Okay. I just wanted to check because I'm available, but if someone else wants to go, that's fine too.
What time? Excuse me.
Yeah,
What
I
time?
think it's at 11.
And you need asking if someone else can?
No, I'm just asking if anyone will be, because we as commissioners are all invited to attend the meeting. I haven't been able to attend for a long time, but
Yeah.
I'm saying if anyone else wants to, that's fine. I'm just bringing it up, and it would be nice to have a commissioner at one of the meetings. Communication meeting. That's what I'm communicating.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the 911 communication meeting. It's basically the armor system.
Yeah.
So I think Commissioner Deschamps was on that before.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Dukirk, would you like to read off the anniversaries for September?
Absolutely. So we have Amanda Anderson at the Sheriff's Department, 2 years. She is dispatch. We have Andrea DeBoer, Public Health and Human Service, lucky number 7 years. We have Pat Eliason, our sheriff, 25 years. Not 25 years as the sheriff, but 25 years working in the Sheriff's Department. He's done a lot of things over those years, so thank you. Lori Erickson, good Lord, did you ever imagine when you started 3 years ago? Thank you so much for all of the changes and roles and responsibilities you have taken on. Mike Keyport, speaking of roles, responsibilities, and changes, what did you agree to? Holy Moses. Kind of wondering if you brought the pandemic. Just kidding. Anyways, thank you for your first year of service. And Lindy, 27 years. We can't live without you, Lindy. None of us see you very often, but we know that you've been there because we can see that you've taken care of everything for us. So thank you. Melissa Rexroad, sorry, Sheriff's Department, again, another lucky number 7. And thank you, as we said at the last meeting, thank you for all you do over there. And we have Kelly Schleep, 6 years in the Highway Department. And we've got another big one, Mike Smith, 27 years in the Recycling Center. We also have Rowan, 8 years, another employee that's gone through many changes since he started, and new things happening, and cell towers and cell phones and all that good stuff. So thank you, Rowan. We have Richard, and I will mess up this last name, so you know I'm just not going to do it. 2 years in our maintenance department. And then Jade Woltman, 3 years in public health and human services. So thank you to all of you, and thanks for another great year under your belt with all the changes that have happened.
Thank you, Commissioner DeKirk. And then we had 2 reports, the agenda for the Active Living Steering Committee and the EDA board packet. I believe that we're at the end of our meeting, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. We have support, excuse me.
Starley support.
Okay, and a roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw, excuse me, is top of the list. Commissioner Mills. Commissioner Mills, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I lost my connection. Are we voting to adjourn?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner DeKirk,
Aye.
Commissioner Starley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim. Thanks, everyone, for the meeting, and
Thank
have
you.
a very good rest of the day.
You too.
Yep.